Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining our Signworld Public webinar today. My name is Jeannie Borum, and I am part of the corporate team here at Signworld, and I'll be moderating our session. For those of you who have not watched or participated in one of these prior, I'll just give you a really quick overview of what to expect for our next hour together. First off, we're going to have each of our owners who are currently running Signworld operations throughout the country introduce a little bit about themselves, where they're located, how long they've been running their business, the name of their business, a little bit about their background, and just an overview of their business overall. Once they do their introductions, then we turn the floor over to all of our attendees who are prospective owners considering Signworld. We'll give each of you an opportunity to ask a single question at a time. We do ask you to keep it to one question each opportunity. We got quite a few logged in. I see about 7 guests here today, so we might not get a chance for second round of questions, but we'll do our very best to get through as many as we can. When you are asked to be taken off of mute, just introduce yourself, where you're located, and go ahead with the question, and then we'll have the owners address them. So with that said, let's go ahead and introduce you to our owners who are our panelists today. I'm not going to go in any specific order today. So Bruce, let's just start with you. Please give an introduction of yourself.
Okay. My name is Bruce Gardner, and name of the business is Connecting Signs. We're located in Fort Collins, Colorado, and we've been in the business for 12 years. Our facility is 4,800 square feet. We have 5.5 employees, and my background is I came from a project management background in the corporate world. Worked in the corporate world for 30 years, and then got into this. So I've been doing this for 12 years.
Wonderful. And what's your 2024 sales target? And talk a little bit about your largest customer or recent project you've had.
Okay. Our target is 1.2 billion, and that's our projection for this year. Our largest customer is the local university here, Colorado State University. We work a lot with the athletic department. It's not one of our biggest projects that we've done recently, but it kind of stands out. We put letters up on the facade of the stadium, and it was for a guy that they were retiring his number, so we put those up. It was a notable install, so during the game and stuff, we could watch it and watch them unveil with the banner and all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool. That's one that comes to mind.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Bruce. We appreciate it. All right, let's go to Steve next. Steve, if you can give an introduction, that'd be great.
Hi, Steve Livingston. We're in Las Vegas, Nevada. The company name is Las Vegas Custom Signs. So we've got Las Vegas, Henderson, Boulder City, Pahrump, a couple of different metro markets that we service. We are currently in our 4th year of business. We'll complete our 4th year January, so coming right up. Got a couple months left in our 4th year. And then currently we're in 3,600 square feet. We've got about 1,200 that is interior space, offices, one open room, kind of our clean space. And then the other 2,400 is warehouse. We've got a 12 by 12 door, and everything is HVAC controlled. And then employees, I've got myself plus 4 other guys. Currently, we've got a fabricator, a full-time installer, and then we've got 2 guys who do vinyl for us and run our CNC machine. They're kind of jack of all trades. They do our designs and our mock-ups, that kind of thing. So that's our team. And then 2024 sales projection, we're going to wind up between 825 and 850, somewhere right in that range where we should wind up. And then biggest customer or project. I'm going to go with one current, not one that we've finished. We just embarked. We're about 3 weeks into a project for Jason Aldean's Las Vegas Kitchen and Bar. It's going to be right at the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Harmon Avenue. It's in City Center 63, so a newer shopping district that they just built out on the strip. We've done a couple smaller projects in there, and we got a call right off of our website. There's a guy named Eric, and he called up and he said, "Hey, I'm in town today for Jason Aldean's Kitchen and Bar." And he said, "You're the only sign company that has picked up the phone so far. Are you able to meet with me today?" He said, "I'm in town. I got a bunch of interior signs we need, and I just really need to meet with somebody today." And I said, "Okay, we'll make that happen." So I showed up, and he was a little disorganized, didn't have everything he needed, but he gave me some neon templates and explained to me the signs he needed, and wound up with a $73,000 sale for 11 interior neon signs, and just an awesome project. So we took the deposit on that. We just got the finalized proof a couple days ago. We're already starting to work with our local neon guys to get the signs made. So huge project, and just for picking up the phone.
Love it. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing, Steve. Congratulations.
awesome.
All right, let's go to Ben next.
First off, I'd take all payment in coupons to that bar or restaurant if I were you, Steve.
Little
So
barter.
my name's Ben King. I run King Signs, Graphics and Imaging. We're in the Minneapolis market. We're approaching our 8th birthday. So this fall will be our 8th year, or starting and then our 8th year. We're in 4,000 square feet. We moved at the end of last year, end of 2023. I have 4.5, 5 full-time employees. It fluctuates based on kind of need and that one other person's schedule. Our projected volume this year will be about 1.2 million. We had a couple of months that were softer in the spring for a handful of reasons that kind of intentional in me trying to slow us down to solidify some processes and things. And so, I think initially going into this year, we wanted 1.4, but now I've kind of augured that down to 1.2. My biggest client, we have a guy that works for a company called Varsity Group. They're based out of Iowa, and they have kind of sales reps, and he goes around to schools and sells, whether it's to the athletic director or the principal, whomever it is. And so we've done about 100 projects for them over the last 4 years, at about 65 different schools. So a couple of schools have come back, and we've done 2 or 3 projects with them. And where I like about the setup is it's almost entirely stuff we can do in-house. The margin on it is really, really good. And it's, he does a lot of the initial legwork, and then we do the design, production, and installation. So the average ticket, I think, is about $4,000. So we've done about $400,000 with him over the last 4 years. And again, he's bringing the schools to us. So.
Very good.
Oh, and then my background, I was with Target. I was a big box retail. I was a director for them for about 14 years, and then decided to get out and become my own boss. So
That's awesome. What was the name of the company that you said? Varsity
Group is his, who pays him.
Mhm.
And they're really big in the state of Iowa. And then they have got kind of sales account reps in the states that touch. So we've done a couple colleges with them, but we get all the way down to elementary schools. We had in Minneapolis market, every elementary school in kind of each municipality is built the same. So we must have gone through every elementary school in about 4 or 5 different markets and just put like window graphics on the music rooms, because every single music room in all these elementary schools were identical. So it was just kind of like a reoccurring every kind of 3 weeks, we were in another school doing the exact same thing. And so, and then once he gets it, then once we do one school, then he just uses it to sell the next school and the next school. He and I actually went to like an athletic director conference where he kind of drove me around, and he and I would pitch the stuff together, and that led to another 4 or 5. We've replaced everything from championship banners to, we did one in the floor on a basketball court. So we've done and then the most of the stuff we do is kind of wall murals leading into the weight room and or right outside the gym, stuff like that. We just got done with one where we took a bunch of their images from their alumni that have kind of made it in collegiately and professionally, and they had the photos of them in the high school. And so we built kind of like a, Hopkins High School here in the Twin Cities. here's all the people that have gone on to bigger and better things. And we did a huge wall mural where we had to rent scaffolding, and it was a pretty cool project when it was all said and done.
No, that's awesome. Congratulations. Sounds like a great customer.
Yeah.
All right. And to round out our panel, Dan Werner.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Werner. I am the VP of Operations for Signworld Corporate. I'll pretty much be here just sharing some insight on what we teach, what we train from the corporate side. If there's some insight that I can provide from my experience being around the industry, I grew up in a Signworld location, so I like to joke that I started in diapers and I'll end in diapers. But I'll share some insight from a few different angles. But appreciate you all being here. And just one last little housekeeping item before Jeannie gets started. At some point through today's webinar, Sheree will be kicking on a few different slideshows just to give you some ideas of different projects worked on by Signworld owners, things that they're proud of, that they were able to create for their customers, as well as giving you some insight into what some of these locations look like. So a lot that you'll be able to see from a visual perspective while we work through the Q&A portion.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. All right, now the fun begins. We're gonna call you off by name. And when we do, if you can, again, just share where you're located and then give us one question that you'd like the owners to answer during our time together today. So with that said, I'm going to start with Donna. Donna, if you can take yourself off of mute, tell the group where you're located and go ahead with the question.
Hello, I'm Donna Watkins, and I am southwest of Indianapolis, Indiana. So I've been on quite a few of the webinars listening in, and what made Signworld your ultimate decision to say yes? What took you to that level to say yes?
Great question. All right, let's start with Bruce first. Go back 12 years. What was your decision process? Why'd you choose Signworld?
It was crazy because I went through a broker coach and she gave me six ideas, and I basically brushed the sign company thing off to the side right away. I was like, I don't even know what that is. And as I went through checking out the vitamin stores and the little soup kitchen restaurants and whatever else she had, I was like, okay, what is this Signworld thing? So I got to looking more at it, and I had kind of had a manufacturing background and project management, and kicked the tires a little bit more. I think it was, of course, the no continuing, what do they call it, royalties, or yeah. So that was a good thing, because quite a few of the people I had talked to, these owners of these other franchises, not Signworld, but they complained a lot about paying franchise fees and continuing franchise fees. So yeah, I guess it was the franchise fees, and then just the connection to my background.
Okay, very good. How about you, Ben? 8 years ago, what was your decision process and why did you choose Signworld?
Yes, similar to Bruce, I used a franchise consultant, did a bunch of kind of testing, if you will, to kind of figure out what type of business I would want to run, and brushed away some of the things. I had come from big box retail that was open 7 days a week, 362 days a year. And I knew I kind of wanted something more Monday through Friday. And so that narrowed, that eliminated some of those food places that Bruce mentioned. And then, as I looked at it, that no rules, no royalties was big. I had a couple of kind of acquaintances, former coworkers that had gotten into CertaPro painters and fresh coat painting, and they had been doing pretty well, but it was all about the territory that you had. And so as I looked at that, and kind of joining them, what I would consider good territories were taken. And so then you kind of came back to, man, if you do Signworld, you can sell you can sell anywhere, and you can sell outside your state, you can sell outside your 5 zip codes or whatever it is. And so the combination of business to business, Monday through Friday, and then no rules, no royalties were kind of the thing that pushed me over the edge and said, this is something I want to go do.
Very good. Thank you, Ben. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, so definitely echo the no rules, no royalties. It was March of 2020 when I first engaged Signworld. and really wild times then, right? Right before everything shut down. And it was really a key thing to me that there was no parent company that could come in and say, oh yeah, you're open for business or you're not open for business. Or, you know, because of COVID, these are the things that you do or don't have to do if you're going to wear our brand. So huge selling point to me in the time. I know everyone else has said that, but in the moment, man, that was a big deal because half the businesses in my state were shut down at the time. And it was great to me that at least there was no parent company to make that decision. The other thing was the logical scalability of it. So before Signworld, I was a self-employed truck driver essentially. I was moving cars between here and California, and it was good self-employment. I was able to make okay money, but there was no logical scalability to add another truck and trailer. Just didn't make sense. The numbers weren't there. There was a lot of risk involved. I planned on going into brokering, but then you know, websites popped up that kind of took over that. So I had no way to get from self-employment to business ownership. And then the Signworld model really makes that clear. One of my favorite things is you can kind of scale it to suit your life goals and your income demands and desires. And then you can also kind of scale it to suit how much headache you want to deal with, how much effort you want to put into it, and however big you want to go. So if you want to grow to 800 to 1 million to 1.5 million and kind of stop there, you can. And the model works really well at that size. If you say, no, I've got aspirations to grow this thing bigger and I've got larger income goals than that, you can push to 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. And there's many, many, many Signworld owners in that echelon. And so it was really interesting to me to see that you could build this business to any size that you wanted to. And then on top of that, you don't have to do multiple locations to get there. That was another thing. Some of the other models that I looked at, if you really wanted to grow to larger income figures, you just wound up having to build 3 and 4 and 5 brick and mortars. You know, if you wanted to do it through a barber shop, a kid's barber shop, you had to have 5 of them before you made decent money. Signworld, it was interesting. You could make you know, $2 and $3 million through 8 and 10,000 square foot facilities or smaller. And it was easier to make bigger money than having to do multiple locations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve. Dan, anything to add to that?
I think these owners wrapped it up pretty well, but the two biggest things are really the scalability, and the reach that you can create based on your goals and aspirations as a business owner. And secondly, for most people, after spending, you know, a decade or so in the corporate world, living out somebody else's dreams and corporate missions and everything else that was driven to you by either the corporate executives or the shareholders, you now get to be in control and you get to determine what that outcome looks like, what your day looks like, what the company culture looks like. You've got that say to decide what's best for you. And it's not to say that franchising is a bad thing. There are some people who are built for franchising. There are just others that really want more control to define what that day looks like. So it's the control element and then the scalability.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Okay, let's go to our next guest. Jeff, if you can take yourself off of mute, tell the group where you're located and go ahead with the question.
I am calling, thank you very much, calling from Nashville. This is the first call that I've attended, so I'm kind of in listening mode. So no specific question at this point in time, but very much appreciated the conversation so far. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here, Jeff. All right, let's go to our next guest. Keith, if you can go off of mute and tell us where you're located and go ahead with the question.
Hey everybody, I am Keith Weiss. I am in the Kansas City metro area. And yeah, I would say the question I ask everyone is, as owners, what was your biggest positive surprise when you started your business? And what was your biggest negative surprise when you started your business?
Great question, Keith. All right, let's see them looking backwards, trying to remember back to the beginning. What was the biggest in both categories? Let's start with Steve first, since it's a little newer and fresher for him. Steve, biggest surprise, good and bad.
Yeah, so I remember month 1, my sales goal was $7,000. And I remember opening the doors, my first employee shows up for work, and I remember just going, oh my goodness, how on God's green earth am I going to sell $7,000 worth of signs? Who buys $7,000 worth of signs from me? And I remember day one thinking, where is the business going to come from? And honestly, leading up to it, I'm like, shoot, am I going to be able to get enough business to keep these people busy? And I remember, looking at the Signworld projections and the documentation they give you, it said that by month 6, I was going to need a second employee. And, coming from being self-employed and not being able to see myself out of that box, I was like, how is that going to happen? And then, man, 7,000 came and went, and then 20, and then 30, and then 40, and then 50. And honestly, to date, we have always had more work than we know what to do with. We're not, since we opened our doors, there's never been a day where we walked in and been like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? It's every day we walk in and go, oh my goodness, how on earth are we going to get all of this stuff done? And so I would have thought, honestly, especially in a town where there was 220 sign companies when I opened my doors, there was over 200 other competitors. And I thought, man, how am I going to find a niche in the market? How am I going to generate any business? And the business is there. It has never ceased to amaze me that if I just pick up the phone and I just show up and do the survey, the business is just there. And so we've done campaigns of pricing more aggressively, and when I say aggressively, higher. We've been tried to price higher to slow the pipeline, and the work just keeps coming. So that was my positive surprise. Before I opened my doors, I was just stressed. Is there going to be enough work to keep the guys busy and pay the bills? And that has never been a problem. On the other side of that, it's people. The people are probably the biggest, I don't want to call it a negative surprise, but it's one of the biggest challenges. People have surprised me. Right now, my team is 4 guys, and I can really feel what it feels like to have a quality team. Right now, each one of my guys is an awesome team member. They show up on time, they're reliable, they do great work. But I will admit, it was hard to find them, and I had to go through some duds, and I had to learn some lessons the hard way. But man, once you get those great employees, it's a game changer. This year, we've done so well because we've got 4 guys that are just killing it. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so I learned lessons the hard way with a couple of the guys, but yeah, the people have been probably the sticking point. The greatest lessons learned for me.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Ben, let's go to you next.
I think the biggest positive surprise is not so much how much your network can drive business, but how many times you can, in talking in conversations with somebody that you can help them with somehow a sign kind of fits what they need. And so whether you're helping some youth hockey association, which we do a bunch of, and just all of a sudden, I do a handful of stuff that it's almost kind of just fun stuff to do with people that are in my network. And it's really cool when they come and they're very thankful. Again, it's not a huge revenue piece. And it's not, necessarily paying the bills, but that's been a cool thing that I didn't go into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to help all the people that I know and the people that I interact with. Right. The negative, kind of to piggyback on Steve, is that people piece when you interview somebody and you hire them and they've got the skill set and you bring them in and it starts off in the first kind of 5, 6 weeks is going pretty good. And then there's just some little, initially yellow flags, right? And then those yellow flags turn into red. And so the people piece has been, and it's challenging. And I came from big box Target where I had, 2,000 employees underneath the stores that I ran. And I knew people and the impact that people have. And so it wasn't like I couldn't interview. It wasn't like I didn't know what I was doing in that regard. It was just how much that, you think like, oh, this is going to be perfect. They're a graphic designer. They have 10 years of experience in the sign industry. And then you get in there and initially when they're early on, they're so much part of your team, they're 50% of your team. And so when that 50% can be a little bit, a pain point, that makes kind of the whole process be painful. One of the things that we've learned as we've gotten bigger is now when you get hired here, your last interview actually isn't with me. Your last interview is you and a coworker are going to go and have lunch or coffee or whatever. And then I haven't hired them yet. And then they come back. And so then I sit down with my employee and be like, all right, let's talk about them. And we've avoided a couple of people that they showed flags in that coffee or that lunch with an employee that they didn't show to me. And then the last 2 hires that we've done doing that way have been absolute home runs. But it also took me a while to get a big enough team to do that. So back on early on, I didn't have that team that could kind of help me kind of those maybe blind spots that I had within the industry.
It's great best practice. I like it. Thanks, Ben. Bruce, how about you?
Yeah, that's a great idea, Ben. I think the biggest surprise was how easy it is to sell. When people are calling here, when they walk in the door, they've got a problem, they got an issue, they need a sign, and they don't exactly know what to do. And just by the fact that you're working with them, you're answering phone calls, you're actually talking to them and then spending the time and showing that you care about their issue, and you really do, because you get satisfaction, of course, out of making money off the deal, but you also get satisfaction off of helping a customer out and helping their business, because you are running a business, so you can kind of really, talk about business together with them and relate. And yeah, I've continue. I have some really good new friends, that I met, and they were or still are customers of ours. So that's been a great thing and a surprise from the beginning. Of course, challenges is people, getting the right people. We've gone through cycles of great teams. And anytime you bring a new employee in, you don't want to disrupt the little family you have. And it's truly is a family that you create. And it is so much different than the corporate world that, I had been in before. And that was one of the things, back when I was in the corporate world and you didn't like working with somebody, it didn't really matter. You had to work with them. Here, you can build that team with people that you want to work with. So yeah, I will say people was probably the biggest challenge and continues to some extent, but we've worked out a lot of bugs. So
Very good. Thank you, Bruce. Dan, anything to add to that?
I think these owners are experiencing the same thing that a vast majority of the other owners in the network experience, from the highs and the lows. That typical positive thing that they're learning early on is that everybody you're connected to is a potential customer, or at the very least a potential referral source. And so the sheer amount of opportunity that's out there based on who you're connected to creates that positive unknown that you walk into in year one. But much like these owners on the downside, it's always people. And I think that's safe to say in just about any business. This one becomes a little bit more difficult because while it's sort of easy to interview and test on the skill set side, you're building a very small team that is 100% run based on the culture of the company that you want to create. And if those people, as Ben mentioned, 5 or 6 weeks out, don't show the right characteristics to live within that culture, you're going to have some turnover regardless of whatever their skill set is, even if they're the best sign maker in town. And so you have to really figure out that culture piece early on and what it is that you are willing to allow, what that threshold for pain is, and then find ways to see through that in the interview cycle to be able to match that culture with the person you're bringing in. And as you've heard from them, it takes a little bit of time to bring in those people, but once you have them, they're generally there for a long time, and it helps to stabilize who is on your team and the work that you can actually do as a company.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. All right, let's go to our next guest. Kyle, if you can take yourself off of mute, tell the group where you're located and go ahead with the question.
Hi, Kyle McNeil. I'm located in Fort Mill, South Carolina, which is a suburb of Charlotte. The question I would have right now is, you talked about the top line targets, but how does that translate? What are the average margins that would equate to?
Great question. All right, if you can maybe share what your gross margin is, as well as if you're willing to share your net margins. I know sometimes owners aren't as willing to come forward with that information, but we'll see what these owners want to say for the question today. So Ben, let's start with you first. If you happen to know what your gross margins are, as well as your net, that'd be great.
I haven't looked at it in a couple months, which if Ken or Jack were on this call, I'd get yelled at. So my gross margin is probably 65%. Maybe it might be a little high last I looked, but my net margin, I've always run a little intentionally a little on the heavy side on labor. And then I've also chased some projects, particularly early on. I had a goal of top line revenue and number of clients. And so I didn't stress over profit margins. I was in a financial situation with my wife and kind of our personal bank account, if you will, that it did, I wasn't sweating how much money am I dropping into the Ben King personal checking account each month. So I really focused on, I wanted sheer number of clients and top line revenue. And so those first couple of years, I missed, I think, some of the marks that Signworld had set. Some of that was intentionally, some of that was learning, making mistakes, having to redo projects, things like that. In the last probably 3 years, that's come much more in line. And I typically end the year between, anywhere from, I think my low in the last probably 4 years is like 19% net. And then I've had a couple of years of 24.
Very good. Thank you for sharing.
Ben, real quick, before we move on to the next owner, can you just give a little context to your gross margins? You said somewhere between 60 and 65%. What is your split of in-house to outsourced work?
It's probably, well, dollars wise, it's probably 60-40 or project wise, it's probably like 65-35. So 65% of our projects are in-house. Dollar wise, that probably pushes more in that 55-45 or 60-40, whereas more of that dollar revenue is coming from outsourced projects, just because, we just landed a monument sign this morning that's $45,000 that I will do the design and the permitting on, right? And we'll do some of the graphics that go into the monument sign. The rest is outsourced. So that profit margin is probably only going to be, 25-30%, but it's also 15 grand of profit, right? And so, depending on the project and depending on the month, like we hadn't landed any of those large projects the last 2 months. So the last 2 months, my profit margins were a lot stronger, just because a lot more of the stuff we were doing was in-house. So anytime I can get some of those outsourced projects where I've got 4 or 5 vendors here locally that I really trust and use and lean on. And so, we've landed 3 or 4 jobs in the last 6 months where that they think, they're dealing just solely with King signs. We do that. We're the face of it. And then we project management on the back end and make, $15,000-$20,000 on that job. And it's, only a handful of hours of work for my team. It's a lot of follow-up, right? And a lot of hand holding. And if you don't have good vendors, you can really take it on the chin from your clients if you miss some of those agreed upon deadlines. But it helps, I think, helps you hit some of those revenue numbers more quickly than if you're just truly growing it by how much can I put through my printer and laminator and cutter and get on a car or get on a wall or get on a window, right? And so if you're kind of living in those spaces, you can make a lot of your profit margins can be really good, but that top line revenue is probably not going to, it's not gasoline on a lit flame like it can be when you have some outsourced vendors that are valuable.
Wonderful. Thanks for that additional context. Okay, let's go to Bruce next. See how well he knows his numbers and what he's willing to share.
Yeah, how well I know him. I think our gross margin always runs around 65%, and profit is right around 20. So I think kind of in line with what Ben said. And then in-house, we are, I'd say, 70% in-house, 30% outsourced.
Very
I
good.
agree with everything Ben said about the top line numbers and how to get there faster. I think for the first 5 years, I did very little outsourcing. I was just trying to grow our printer business, and once you get going doing some outsourced stuff, doing some big electrical signs, that definitely grows the top end with smaller margins, but yeah, it's been good.
Very good. Thank you, Bruce. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, so same as the other two guys, we're 63% gross margin. We're at about, I don't have real good numbers on this, but we outsource almost nothing. Banners and prints that are just, the big companies, they do them so much cheaper than we can even do it for. We outsource that stuff. We're just now really hitting a growth spurt, and I'm recognizing that my ability to produce is becoming a limiter to how much work we can take on. And so right now we're starting to outsource some channel editors and some things that we could make in-house. But rather than delay the project, we're going to start to outsource those things. So that's probably going to flex a little bit. We're probably going to start to outsource a little bit more over the next year. But I'm really big on building stuff in-house, and it's mostly my personality. I like having the equipment. I like having the control of the timeline. I enjoy the building of the sign process. And so our net margins, we did 17% last year. We'll be 19 and a half this year, which is a little slimmer than what I think Signworld, the average is. But in our first 4 years, we are just purchasing tools and equipment hand over fist. And so I assume that in the years to come, that will clean up and increase a little bit as we're just not spending money hand over fist on everything. So the guys right now, it's pretty much a green light. If they come to me and they say, Steve, this $300 power tool is going to make my life easier. I don't bat an eye, and I trust my guys and what they need. I mean, I pay attention to it, but we're spending a lot of money. This year we spent $4,000 on a sheet metal brake. We bought a bucket truck and spent thousands of dollars outfitting that. So our margins are going to reflect that, but I really anticipate that paying dividends in the years to come.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Dan, anything to add?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to consider. When you look at the early years, say years 1 through 3, your margins are always going to be slimmer for a few various reasons. One is either it's your lack of confidence in your pricing, and so some of that is going to reflect what the gross and net margins look like on a project. But as you've heard, Ben and I think Bruce say as well, sometimes in those early years, you're really focused more on the growth of the company than you are just the profitability of the business. And so you are being a little bit more aggressive in your pricing to win projects, build that portfolio, and really create a great foundation for future sales that give you the opportunity. Once you've got a happy customer base, now you can start increasing the price that you're charging them as they come back for repeat orders. There's less questions there, in how you price things down the road. But I think too, as you've heard from Steve, in the early years, the goal for a lot of new operations is also to find ways to reinvest back into the business to, again, create growth and scalability. And those reinvestments are always going to affect your bottom line. And so one thing that I would suggest to all of you as you go into the owner validation is open up that question a little bit more, not just what are your gross, what are your net margins, but how much have you reinvested to create more growth and scalability, or what other benefits might you be taking as an owner through the business that are going to affect the overall gross and net margins of the company. That'll give you a little bit better window, because one of the things that we always suggest from corporate, not that we want to avoid taxation completely, but as a small business owner, you do have some advantages in front of you that give you the ability to avoid some taxation and do some tax sheltering through reinvesting in your company or putting money into a 401k plan or things like that that allow you to ultimately shelter taxes that you would be faced as a W-2 employee, perhaps even writing off auto expenses and some meals and some entertainment, some things that are afforded to you as a small business owner that, again, go against your bottom line, but it still gives you that owner benefit that doesn't reflect as a percentage of net profit. And so you have to sort of look at a few of those things. But when you look at the broader spectrum of the owner base, we're going to work off of our earnings claims, which you'll be able to see on paper of where the highs, the lows, and everything else is. But average across the board right now is about 18%. A little bit of what affects that over the last couple of years is just things that have been a result of COVID, whether it's inflation in material costs, it's rising employment costs, it's rising real estate costs that sometimes you're always going to face first as the business provider, the product provider, that eventually will get rolled into your pricing and paid for by your customers. So there's going to be an increase, I think, to that average net as we go along here into complete 24 and go into 25. That's just not reflected in the overall numbers based on the surveys, but that's what you'll see on paper within the organization.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. Before we go to our next, Sherry, you want to start those slideshows in the background while we continue the questions? That'd be great. Thank you. All right, let's go to our next guest. Suraj, if you can take yourself off of mute, tell the group where you're located and go ahead with the question.
Thanks, Jeannie. I'm located in Newcastle, Washington, about 20 minutes away from Seattle. Boy, I have tons of questions, but Jeannie, I'm going to bother you with those later. But
No problem.
some of the questions were answered in the previous answers. What are your, I heard Steve talk about neon signs and bucket trucks. In terms of innovation and technology, how have you seen yourselves evolve? I mean, from when you started to what new techniques have been taken on and the learning process through getting those new techniques, manufacturing techniques? I was
Yeah,
curious.
great question. All right, Bruce, let's go with you since you've been part of this business the longest. How has technology evolved and changed your sign operation and your business?
You know, this is a really cool business for me because I really love looking at new machines and you know, going to a conference and checking things out, how you build things. And so you know, we've bought a flatbed printer, we've bought table cutters, wall cutters that hang on the wall. We've done a lot of things, a router. We bought a bucket truck. So technology, I guess, you know, sometimes you know, what we focus in or what kind of projects we focus in and what products we like to do are really kind of dictated by the requests that we get. It isn't like I go in going, oh, we're just going to do ADA signs or we're just going to do car wraps. It's kind of like what comes to you. And then our business has grown with that. So yeah, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but the technology, there's a lot of new technology that comes, and you know, we of course evaluate it to see if that's what we want to do. A lot of times it's just based on what we see of, you know, how it's going to work out. Most of the time we do things with what we have, and when we outsource like monument signs and channel letter signs, we're contracting out the install. And once we get enough business with that, then we kind of start looking around for maybe a lift truck and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm not sure I answered it, but
Oh,
how's
very
that go?
good. Yeah, it's all good, all good. Ben, how about you? 8 years in business, how have you seen technology evolve and impact your business?
So I've run with the initial package that Signworld gave me for a long time. In fact, we just replaced the printer that I got in October, actually shipped in December of 2016 into 2017, right? So I've added some, you know, kind of what Bruce talked about. We've added some small things, some table cutters. I've had a panel saw, but I have not added any additional equipment since then and kind of just kept it. And that's probably initially why I got back to a previous question Dan asked me is like how much we outsource versus insource, right? I will take it in a little bit different direction. Some of the technology on like the design side or the CRM tools that are out there has really changed in the last, I wouldn't say like last 6 months, but you know, we have some tools that we use now online to communicate amongst the team that we didn't use the first 2, 3, 4 years when we were small, a little bit smaller, didn't have as many projects coming in. So we've tweaked that. That's probably in of all the technology that's come out that we've taken the most advantage of, right? I mean, there's obviously some really awesome CNCs and channel benders and all of those pieces of technology that are out there as well that we haven't necessarily jumped on, but some of the just communication tools and how my team communicates amongst one another. We use a platform called Trello. There's another, was it Mother Mode or something? What's the other one that's similar to that? But anyway, Mother Node, there you go. There's a lot of those tools that are out there that when you hit a certain point within your growth that you're going to really embrace and your team's going to love. And it's really just helped us from a customer follow-up and when I guess more than anything, when somebody's off that's kind of been taking the lead with that client and they call in, my team has the tools at their fingertips to say, well, this is where the project's at versus let me take a message and so will call you back when they're back tomorrow or the next day, right? We can answer some of those questions kind of on the spot. So there's a lot of technology out there, both kind of on the online or within the computer. And then there's a lot of technology that can kind of help you out within the production sphere of things. So.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ben. Steve, how about you? And we'll pair it into equipment, systems, and product. Like has technology changed the type of signs that you see yourself bidding on and providing to your customers? So think about those three categories. Where have you seen biggest changes?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We're not a super cutting edge industry. A lot of the tooling that we use on a day-to-day basis to make signs, there's small advances that are made, but it's not revolutionary each year with technology. So the printers, they're constantly coming up with cool new things in printers. I think now one of the big things is a lot of the printers are coming with the ability to print white. That used to be kind of a rarity. But the HP Latex 365 that we got from Signworld, which I think is updated with a better model now, is a workhorse. It's a reliable, versatile piece of equipment. The rollover table, great investment. I really love our rollover table. Honestly, I think it would be best that each operation have a rollover table and a roll-to-roll laminator. That's just my opinion. I think both do so well at what they do that I can't imagine how we would go back to one or the other. And the rollover table is a fairly new piece of equipment. My initial hire, Ephraim, who's still with us, day one kind of looked at the rollover table sideways. Like, I've never used one of these. I don't know if I want to use one of these. And now he and I regularly talk about how do we do board app without a rollover table. So anyways, on top of that, we have a CNC router that we added in year one. I think it was Ben that mentioned it. You don't want to look at this industry and go, wow, that's a really cool piece of equipment, and just go ahead and buy it because you think it's cool. Honestly, in your first few years of business, your market, your website, and your hiring, what your team's capable of and what they're good at is going to dictate what type of equipment you're going to need. So the CNC router, it's great to have one, but you have to have an employee that can run it, and you have to have jobs that are going to pay for it. So year one, by the end of the year, we were renting so much time on another local CNC. And Ephraim, who had 15 years of experience running one, it was a no-brainer for us to purchase that equipment. We've also got a panel saw, we've got a sheet metal brake, we've got a welder, we just purchased a bucket truck. So a lot of those tools, there's nothing super new or super cutting edge about them from an equipment standpoint. I'll tell you one tool I'd love to have. They had it at the Signworld show this last year. It's a direct printer that prints in 3D so that you can print ADA signs. Man, if I was picking a cool tool, that'd be the one that I'd pick. But again, before you go and spend $30, $50, $100,000 on a piece of equipment, you got to make sure that you've got people to operate it in business to pay for it. And you kind of learn that as you go. From a systems perspective, we're using Corbridge, which is the software that was included in our initial package. I think it's still included. And Corbridge is a decent solution. Admittedly, there's some sticking points and some limitations. There's some things that we wish Corbridge would change. They've been threatening us with an update now for several years. So Corbridge works. It's functional. We've been able to adapt it and make it work. Are there some things that I would like to see in it? Yes. We've been exploring Mothernote, which looks like a huge step up over Corbridge, but we've got some growth to do before we can use that application to its fullest. So I think it was either Ben or Bruce said there's lots of computer programs that you can use to aid in your processes, your communication, your order tracking. That side is really there. I hope that fully answers the question. Jeannie, was there a third aspect there? I think you mentioned.
It was really just the signs themselves. Have you seen a lot of technology changes in the types of signs that are out there overall?
Not a whole lot, honestly, no.
Yeah, I'd say more digital is probably, and more wraps in general, like more full wraps versus just lettering. But outside of that, those are the only two I can think of. Okay. Dan, anything to add to that?
I think the owners answered it really well. The only thing that I'll add is our job really is to go out there and continually do R&D to figure out what are new softwares that can be brought in to create efficiencies within the operation, what are new pieces of equipment that open up the gamut to what you can make and serve your customers with. So there's a lot out there, but as Steve mentioned, the industry is rather slow to advance from a technology standpoint, because you have to think about who owns most sign companies, and they are generally technicians. These are not, your technician-minded sign companies that are out there are not generally going to make big investments into equipment and make dramatic changes, because most of them are skilled labor individuals, and they've learned a craft, they've learned a trade, and so they get stuck in their ways. And so the only advancements that really come are when bigger companies push for that because customers are asking for it. And so it's a rather slow industry to adjust and change, but we've seen a lot of change over the last 37 years as an organization, that our job is really to stay in front of that and present that to the owners and give you that opportunity to do that investigation on your own and determine what the right next step is for you in technology and equipment.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. All right, let's go to our next guest. Christy, if you can take yourself off of mute, tell the group where you're located and go ahead with the question. Christy, are you able to unmute yourself? All right, if you're not able to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and put a question in the Q&A chat box, and we'll take a look at that and ask for you after the next individual. So with that said, Greg Smith, if you can take yourself off of mute and go ahead with the question.
Hi, thanks for all the questions and answers thus far. It's been very informative, so thank you. I think, well, I'm recently laid off. I live in north central Minnesota, and I'm looking at this as an opportunity to maybe start my own business. I've had one in the past, completely different industry, but I'm now considering this as an option. So my situation is unique in the sense that I am in a very rural area, and I'm concerned about my opportunity as a result. For the population is small, the workforce is small, maybe not as skilled as in the cities, etc., the larger cities. So I have a conversation yet to take place with Dick Cassidy, and I'm looking forward to that. I don't know that any of you can contribute to my concerns because you're all in large cities, but that's my circumstance.
Well, let's just pose that as a question. So Steve, Ben, Bruce, you're in more major metro markets, but, thinking of running a business in a more rural community, what would be some of the things that you would recommend that Greg considers in his decision? Steve, how about you?
Yeah, I'll bite off on that. So something that's interesting about the Signworld network, there's two basic schools of thought, and there's no right or wrong here. You can sit at a table with owners, and there will be guys at the table who build almost nothing and outsource almost everything, and they have million-dollar businesses and great margins. And then there's guys who sit at the table like myself who just prefer to build everything. We ship almost nothing. But really, the Signworld model is flexible because you're not limited to your locality. You really do have the capability to do business nationwide. There's countless guys that they do projects all over the country, and they outsource to Signworld owners for the installs. And so you're not limited necessarily just to your locale. And a lot of that is going to be based on how you set up your website and how you market your company. And you can talk through those things and those goals with the various marketing partners that Signworld provides. So don't limit your business to just necessarily your local market. You have the capability of going nation and potentially worldwide. So that'd be my first thought there.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Bruce, anything to add?
Well, I think it definitely is a challenge. I think when you're starting off and you're in a smaller market, I think Fort Collins, Colorado is a small market, at least compared to the others in our mastermind group. So my top line revenue has always been a little bit less than theirs, always been behind, but it's easy to keep things in-house and keep your profit margins up. And so even on a smaller scale, you can still keep your profit margins up and make a nice income. So, and then all of the stuff that Steve said about outsourcing, you can outsource about everything and find people to do installs, find people to print and ship product for you. So it's all about, setting up your website in such a way that shows you're kind of a national sign company and you can do that sort of thing. I think growth is going to be a little tougher at the beginning because you have to your website has to be found, and if you're a brand new company, that's difficult. So, I don't know where you're at in north central Minnesota. Are you around Detroit Lakes area?
Let me unmute here. Brainerd Lakes,
Okay,
2.5 hours north of Bend.
okay, so you're way up there. Yeah, so I don't know. I was thinking, Minnesota has a lot of boat graphics and things like that. I know it's mostly fishing boats and stuff, but we've done a few tournament bass boats and stuff, wraps on those. So there's probably things that I wouldn't even think of being here in a dry climate, but there's probably opportunities.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, let's go to your fellow state
All right, so.
owner here.
so
Ben,
Gr-
what do you say?
So Greg, I go up to the Brainerd Lakes area 2-3 times a year, and every time I drive up there, I have one thought: who the hell is making the signs? Because there are signs everywhere, all over the Detroit Lake or the Brainerd Lakes area. And so, and those businesses change time and time again. Now, the guys, both Bruce and Steve talked a little bit about like your website. I actually think that being in a small or rural area, your word of mouth and pounding the pavement is probably going to be even more vital than it was for those of us that have 5,000, 500,000 businesses surrounding us, right? And so, but when you can get the word out that like, yeah, when that new restaurant changes names, like this is the sign shop for that area, I know that I get jobs and requests up for like all the way up to St. Cloud, and I'm constantly going like, I don't want to drive that far, right? And so by all means, I want you to join. And so then I can be like, call this guy. Like he's your guy for that area. And you're gonna pull, I mean, when you consider too, that like when I go do a sign in Woodbury or we do stuff in like Hudson, Wisconsin, that's an hour and 10 minutes for me when my team goes. We did some stuff down in Lakeville and Egan, and another hour down there in traffic. And we bid all that. We put all that in our bid. And so if you did an hour's loop around your sign, where you're located or where you put your sign shop, you're going to touch St. Cloud. You're going to get all the way up to Grand Rapids. You're going to get a lot of potential. And there, again, when you drive around, there's signs everywhere. And so somebody's making those signs. And I'll be quite honest, I don't want it to be me and having to drive 3.5 hours. So I would love for you to consider to pursue the opportunity, and we can chat more about it. But the business is out there. I think Steve and Bruce both hit on a good point of like, how do you keep your kind of expenses in line so you can maybe grow a little slower? That's going to be vital. But I definitely think the work is there. When the lights go out at Zorba's, they got to call somebody, right? Because that's going to get replaced. And so I won't bore all these people with all my other Minnesota knowledge, so I'll just leave it at that.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, very good. Well, we do have one more attendee that has not had a chance to ask a question. Owners, can you give me a thumbs up if we're good just to go a minute or two over just to give time for this one? Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. David, if you can take yourself off of mute, go ahead and share where you're from and go ahead with the question.
Hey, Dave Manzo. I'm in northern New Jersey. I can make this quick because I don't have a question. This reinforced a lot of kind of what I've heard, right? We're all talking about signs, but wow, there's such a wide array and breadth of signs, and so many different ways that businesses are managed, and the value of this network has been talked about whenever during my discovery, and it seems pretty clear. So I'm still going through the discovery phase. I don't have a specific question just right now, but this just kind of was helpful to reinforce a lot of what I've heard. So thanks.
No, we appreciate you being here today, David. No problem. And good luck with your continued discovery. I did see a hand raised. Suraj, if it's a really quick one, go ahead.
It's very quick. I really appreciate the time taken by the three owners here and sharing your wisdom. What prompts you to do this? Because it's not a franchise model. I assume there's nothing that mandates that you help the franchise grow. So what is it that makes you spend the time here speaking to us newbies?
I love this question. Thanks for asking, Suraj. Owners, why do you take the time to share your thoughts and insights with these prospective owners and just help overall? Steve, let's start with you first.
Sure. You know, when you go to Starbucks and somebody buys your drink in front of you and you're like, yes, of course I'm going to buy the drink for the car behind me. Honestly, that's what it is. I remember 4 years ago sitting on these very calls and being completely on the fence about what to do. And every single owner that I called was just like this. They were glad to share their numbers. They were glad to take the time out of their definitely busy days, which I understand more now than I did then. And I just remember needing this data, needing these answers to make an informed decision. And now I'm like, yeah, if I can return that favor going backwards, that's an easy answer for me. So yeah, that really is it.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Ben, how about you?
Very similar, people did it for us when we were going through that. I've always prided myself on being a good peer. I think that's something that when you're a good peer, you don't get anything necessarily out of helping your peer, but in some aspects you do. And then I want everyone that comes on board with Signworld to be as informed and come at it from a really good space. So when we run into each other at the convention, you're off to a great start. You're asking the right questions versus those that come on and maybe jump into it, and if they're not successful because they don't know as much as they needed to know. So that's why I do it.
Very good. Thank you, Ben. Bruce, how about you? 12 years in, you're still joining these calls, sharing it. What would you say?
Well, this business is built on helping people and helping them with their problems. So you kind of have that type of person that is successful in sign world and in the sign industry. So yeah, I totally remember 12 years ago attending this and building the relationships and stuff. I think it's great and helping the folks out that are listening. I don't know, it feels good to do it. So there you go.
Very good. And I'll just round that out and say what's great about this organization and this family, because it really is a big family, is not only willing to help prospective new owners who haven't even made the decision to join the family, but within the organization, the daily support, the ongoing help is just tremendous. It really does make you feel like you have a whole army of people behind you to help you through any challenge you might come through. And that's what Signworld, in my opinion, is all about. It's really about the community of owners and them giving back to one another. So with that said, in the spirit of giving back, Steve, Ben, and Bruce, a big heartfelt thank you to you all for your time. Congratulations on the continued success of your businesses. We appreciate you joining today and sharing your insights. To our prospective guests that have joined, thank you so much for joining us today as well. Thanks for your interest in learning more about us. Whoever you're working with on the corporate team, we look forward to those continued conversations to help you come to whatever decision you need to make to decide if this is the right fit for you. And with that, wish you all a great rest of your Wednesday. Thanks for joining in on our session today.